Welcome back to House of a Thousand Books, everybody. This month we are reading FantasticLand by Mike Bockoven. My name is Brody.
My name is Stephanie, or friends call me Steph.
My name is Dan.
I'm Gabby.
And I'm SJ. What's up? I don't know why my voice cracked, but just pretend it didn't.
Going through puberty. Like these
Yeah.
kids, honestly, that's how
Yeah.
young they're trying to portray them. I'm really excited to talk about this book. I loved it a lot. I was telling SJ as I was reading it because I read it first, um, that like I couldn't pick a favorite chapter. I loved this book so much. And Dan, I'm actually really excited to hear what you have to say as someone who's worked
Mm.
in an amusement park.
A
Are we allowed to
lot.
say the D word?
Yes.
We are.
Says it. The book
Give
says
them the
it.
D.
So
All right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Disney.
No, they name drop hard on this book.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, Gab, do you
So
want to give us our general kind of broad overview
yeah.
of what
So
readers can expect from Fantastic Land?
yeah, the broad overview of this book is basically there's an amusement park, a separate entity. They put this down specifically, separated from Universal's from Disney, its own amusement park in Florida during a hurricane. They were supposed to have some of the employees stay behind just to take care of the park, but the storm is just so much worse than they thought it was. And so basically they're stranded. And everyone kind of splits off into the five sections of the park, basically where they worked. So there is the Heroes Land, the Pirates, the Fairies, the Freaks, or like the circus area, and the Heroes, the Deadpools. And
And the
you just
shop girls,
and the
what?
shop girls, I'm sorry, the shop girls and Switzerland, don't forget Switzerland,
yeah.
our little medics. And Sam Garlic by
And the
himself.
mole men.
Oh, and the mole men.
Oh, the
Yes, yes.
moment.
Wow, I'm
Yeah.
forgetting
Okay,
a lot
there's
of
way
people.
more
Yeah.
than
So
five.
tribes, lots of tribes, basically. And they stress about this a lot that these are like young people freshly out of high school, probably either kind of the same to the Disney program where they're college age or have just graduated, or in case of the mole men, like are very much older, or the management is very much older. I think really the security guards, the ones that were with the robots, were really the only ones that were like middle age. Everyone else was either a lot older, a lot younger. Um, yeah, and it follows what goes down in Fantasticland. Big points. I guess we'll talk about them because there's a lot of big points. So let's just start at do you guys want to just talk about the very beginning, that whole sequence of when shit goes down?
Well, it's probably like good to preface that every chapter is like interview based.
Yeah,
Like there's
looks like
like there's
mixed media.
yeah.
The beginning when shit goes down, the very beginning, it's Sam Garlake. How do you guys feel about that character just overall, having read the whole term book?
I mean, it's so. I just loved how the story was told because, like, Steph brought up that it is like mixed media interview briefs. We have that fictional author's note to set us up. Second time we've encountered that in this book club this year, which is really interesting because I've never encountered that prior to
And
starting this.
don't forget the what's it called? The author's note and the foreword also being fiction again.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Steph, did you read it?
Yes, I read it. Yes,
The
I
only
learned
time
my lesson. I've
the
learned my
only time I
lesson.
read the author's note is if it's fake.
Yeah.
Yeah,
But how
sometimes
do you
I will.
know?
Yeah, but how do you know? You have to start reading it to
I
know.
only I only know because SJ always tells me.
Oh.
True, very true. But yeah, so we start like right off the bat, they're really trying to paint this to be like this really happened. And I was like bought in immediately. I was like, okay, yeah, for sure. For a second there, I was like, oh, they're gonna like pretend to be Disney and be like really ambiguous. Then they just like name dropped and it's like, no, like Fantastic Land is this whole other park, this whole other like LLC corporation. It was really cool. I liked the slow introduction to like the park, its founding, like how big of it like impact it did like for the Florida tourism. Um, and I loved how like it was so paced that they kept alluding to something big and crazy happened, but they just like kept you dangling. Like you never actually get to find out until like much later.
The author goes through a lot of effort to make sure that the reader understands that this is a competitor with Disney and Universal. This is like in that same category. So I think that's really helpful because it's like, you could have an amusement park that's like Six Flags, but I think understanding like the scale of it is really important because I mean, it helps you understand first of all how big this park is and how spread out everything is, and that obviously comes into play once we get some factions.
For sure. And Eshe, you mentioned it where it's like they have do a really good job of having that one dangly piece of information that he keep on putting in front of you. And when it happens, that scene, the Council of Pieces, I don't know about you guys. I was like, damn.
Yeah.
That was
definitely
sick.
we will get to that later.
Yeah.
Oh my God. So I had first seen this on, I guess it was like a mini end cap of like horror amusement park themed books because it was next to Maveland. Mave what? Mayfly.
Mayfly.
Yeah.
I just mixed them up. And so
Mayland.
because next to Mayfly, and I love realism in my books that I can relate to, especially. So I was like, I want to read both of these. Took pictures of them, and then we needed an amusement park dupe for Hyde. I was like, let's do this. So I already knew going into it that I was gonna have like a second game going of how realistic is this.
Mm.
It did not disappoint. It was real and
Do you know what it was giving for me? Like the whole time I was like, I'm watching like the Fire Festival documentary or like that Astro World, like one of those like documentaries like about like this like catastrophe that like you cannot believe actually happened, but it surprisingly somehow did. That's exactly like I don't know. I was just bought in. I keep saying that, but he really made me feel like this happened. Hurricane Sadie, she was a big bitch and like she came through. Like I believed it. I did.
This
And
was like a Discovery Plus like exclusive, I feel like.
Yeah.
I would have found it like on that streaming service, I think.
And these interviews happen years after this happens, which you don't really find out until more towards the end.
And it's funny too because we were actually reading this around the time that big hurricane was actually hitting Florida.
Oh my
So,
God. It's supposed to
yeah.
hit in like what, 4 days? 3
yeah.
days?
Well, I think
Well, there was another one. There was another one that was hitting. Like,
Oh,
yeah.
yeah. Oh, but
wow.
in the book, yeah. Oh, yeah. There's that hurricane. Sorry, I meant to
That's
say
crazy.
that like Hurricane Sadie would be touching down in like 3 days.
well, let's hope this isn't predicting the future because
Yeah, I
No,
know.
I know. Yeah, and it just like to Birdie's point before, like how he really made it a point to show them how big of a competitor they were to Disney. Like,
Yeah.
also makes it the fact like the park failed that much more like shocking because those parks do not fail. Like they are so everything is so meticulously planned and like they have so many precautions and everything is planned and they have it. Like that's how those big companies work. So like for this to happen and then obviously what happens at the very very end isn't that much more shocking.
No, it's okay. I was just gonna say it's probably also like for us to think as the reader, be like, if it can happen here, it could happen in Disney, it could happen in Universal. So that's like I think where the scary part could be like, oh, is this entirely fiction? Or would people really react this way if it really did happen in places like that?
It's stuff. I actually love that as kind of like a little gateway, if you will. One of the earliest interviews we get is that family, like from the perspective of the dad, of like them, like the alarms went off in the middle of the night. The wife wanted to leave. They were like, I spent too much money. We have to stay. Like that really humanized a lot of the experience because obviously it's a majority of like the people who were there and trapped there. And we get like their perspective. But to hear a family of just like how this impacted them was frustrating because I hated that dad, but
Yeah.
really, really cool.
Yeah.
well, it
Don't
wasn't
talk about
necessary,
it.
but he just put it there.
Well, it did something kind of
Yeah.
big at the end of the interview. Well, like not big at the time, but so basically they were like barely gonna escape, but then one of the pirates walked by and told them which bus to get on. And they escaped till the guy ends that interview with being like, I'm so thankful for that pirate
But
because like he saved us that day.
it was before they went crazy, so he probably actually was just
Just a regular
Yeah, but
kid.
just to like humanize
Yeah.
the pirates a little bit for us subconsciously before we read like what the pirate Nazis.
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, it's reminding us that they were just employees helping the guests. Like this was not meant to happen.
They were regular kids before this, yeah. And it talks about the extreme circumstances of all around Florida when this hurricane hit and how unexpected it was and how it changed whole counties and towns. Like they either very much came together and were able to put their resources into one and thrive as a community, or they completely turned on each other. Like I think one of the interviews near the end, one of the guys was just like, yeah, there was like a stop sign with arms just hanging from it. And he was like, why, who would think of that? They're like, why would you do that? So it's like you saw very much the extremes of humanity during this. So and they mentioned it too. It later on in the interviews, they're like, this should have honestly gotten from the scale of what they had, this should have been so much worse than it actually was. So it's a small miracle that this wasn't more of a bloodbath.
All just because those kids didn't have their phones.
Oh, because those kids didn't have those goddamn phones.
That's what everybody says, which I think that's true. I think that's definitely true, but I think that's funny that I feel like that's like the one cause that everyone pointed to. And especially too, like the author was saying how, I mean, there was just no point of any of it because they had a shit ton of resources. They had enough water, they had enough food to last. All they needed to do was just hold out. But you get some kids, you take their phones.
They talk about that too. They're like, hey, like there's two leaders, I think, if you really think about it, that talked about these kids and understanding that they had no access to stimulus all the time. And it was one was Brock, and he was like, let's put that to good use. And he controlled the pirates. The other was the head of the freaks, who was like, these kids, like I understand, like they are so used to being on their phones and everything. So he's like, we had a ton of weed, we had lots of alcohol, and honestly, like we had a great time. So it's like you have the two extremes. You either have the chill leader who's like, all right, you know what? We're gonna ride this out. We're just gonna stick to our own and smoke a lot of pot. And then you have the Brock Hockney side of murder and just trying to justify all the horrible things that the pirates had done.
First of all, was it? I think they said it was a month that they were in there.
A month.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. So I was reading and I'm like, there's no way they got this crazy in a month. But what you just said makes so much sense. Like, first of all, they don't have that stimulus, but also not recording each other and holding each other accountable to the general public means they can go crazy and kill people because there's no phones around. Like, I didn't
That's
think that
right.
was.
Yeah.
They talk about that too. There's a quote in the book where it's just like there was recognition in one of the kids' faces, and he was like, there is no consequence to what I'm doing. Who's gonna stop you? What's gonna happen?
Yeah.
No one's coming to save us. And it's sad when you realize, and you go through the book too, and one of the girls at the end was just like, I thought, like when she saw the military or the first aid, whatever, coming in, she was like, I was prepared to die today. I thought we were gonna die today.
Oh my God. Yeah,
So it's
that
like
was crazy.
it was a month for sure, but for them it would have been however long it would have been. Like for them, they already thought that rescue was off the table and that this was the rest of their life.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
Crazy.
Before we jump into like really the big tribe break off, can we talk about like the shelter and like what happens down there to cause the tribes to form? Well, I mean, so Sam Garlick is like the general man or one of the higher up managers of FantasticLand. He is appointed to like make sure the protocol systems they have in place for the disaster, whatever plans follow through. So basically, they have like what 400, where they were supposed to have 400 employees down in a bunker under the park, where they were going to stay for 4 days, and then they were going to make sure the park stays clean, whatever, and then they were going to get out of there and get paid overtime. But a couple hours in, Hurricane Sadie was like way more than they anticipated, and they lose power. And ultimately, like that is it. The power loss, you could really argue, was it. Like 12 hours in, power's cut, it's pitch black, all these people are just plunged into darkness, and there's panic. And Sam is trying to restore some order. He's screaming, he's yelling, but you have 400 people screaming in the dark. No one could fucking hear him. There's no electricity.
Black. He's like using his hands to try and find his way.
And he got like destroyed. If you remember, like people were just like throwing elbows. Like he got punched in the face. Like he's just trying to get somewhere. So while he's in the main control, because he knows for some reason to go in there, he was going to try to like turn the generators on or something. He gets attacked from behind again in the pitch black. He reacts just to like deflect and protect himself according to him. And it turns out, we find out later on, that he apparently allegedly killed that girl in that attack in the dark. And ultimately, after all that goes down, a couple more fatalities, he decides to just open one of the doors because at least some natural light will come in. And really, that's kind of it. After that, everyone is kind of unleashed and they just go out into the park and take over.
Yeah, he actually he opens the front door first as a distraction and also to let light in. So that way he was like, I'm going to open this door so that way everyone goes that way and that way I can get to the command center. So he like sacrificed, he said like, fuck it, open the door. And like 5 other people died, one of them being Brock Hockney's brother who died from an asthma attack.
Pathetic.
Which comes up later.
That would have been me.
Pathetic. But
do
also,
you want to talk about it now? Do you want to talk about that now?
Well, I mean, it was really
I
insignificant, to be honest. So, like, a little kid dies because he can't find his asthma inhaler, and apparently that creates a psychopath.
I did not realize that was his brother until like the end.
Yeah, it kind of just like slid through the cracks for me.
Yeah, because the lack of phones, sure, is one thing. The lack of stimulation, sure, is another. But like the lack of management and leadership, I think, really ultimately caused what happens later to happen, as the book would put it.
Well, and I think that was part of what Sam Garlick's like issue was, because like, yeah, I kind of felt bad for him, but at the same time, like what led up to this, like he was starting to stop, like he wasn't sharing information with the rest of the people, which like was causing more panic. There was a group of the people that were in the shelter that were constantly just looking for updates, just anything, because they were probably scared. And it got to a point where he kind of stopped sharing that information with them. And most likely that's probably why that girl was in the command center to begin with, because it turns out the girl that he killed allegedly was like one of the main people who was just trying to get information of what was going on.
Oh, I don't remember that at all.
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
It was early on, yeah.
No, it was chaos for real. Yeah,
honestly,
I definitely felt bad for him. And then like you could even argue, I mean, like he ultimately gets arrested. He takes a lot of the rap for what happened. We found out at the very, very end. But then people were kind of coming for his character and being like, you never even did anything along the way. When he like tried to organize the little, what was it, the Circle of Peace, whatever the fuck they called it.
Council of Peace.
Council of Peace.
Turns into Council of Pieces.
Yeah. Like he tried. He really.
He did.
And then he just went into hiding. Naturally, I would have done the same thing.
Yeah, you have to like think about like the circumstances. Like this was like a crazy thing. Like he worked with what he could.
He was set up for failure. One manager with 400 people, bruh.
This wasn't his job.
Yeah, no, it was. I don't. And like we can blame like management, we can blame all of that, but truthfully, like, and I think about like how COVID kind of impacted that too. It's just like people were working with like we were set up to fail. People like so like we couldn't have prepared. There wouldn't have been enough preparation. I think.
Also, at the end of the day, they blamed him so much for one death. They're like, he definitely killed that girl. Blah blah blah. I'm like, yeah, but everyone else also killed so many other people. So it's like, how?
Well, you know what was kind of out of pocket, and correct me if I'm wrong, but there was like an interview where someone was like kind of saying that like he like was like a sexual predator to some of the other employees. Like, so again, everyone's an unreliable narrator, so who can never be sure for like, but
that was.
And I was like, wait,
what?
Interview. So is he gross? Like, I don't know who to believe here.
I wouldn't give that a lot of credit just because he was saying that him and 3 other like management people were doing that, but I don't even remember it mentioning other management people.
Yeah, it's like it's a random throwaway in Brock Hockney, so it's like near the end, so it's kind of making you. I think the purpose of it was for you to be like, oh, like should I be questioning everybody that I've read so far? Because the thing is, it's not mentioned at all until Brock's interview. And he just says like, oh, like, did anyone tell you about the allegations that Mr. Garlick had with some girls who like went to him for comfort and were sexually assaulted or like were like preyed on, predated, and were preyed on. It's like, it comes out of nowhere. It's left field.
Yeah,
very much. And whether or not it's real, whether or not it's fake, it's all about how reliable your narrator is. And honestly, Brock Hockney has incentive to just say whatever the fuck he wants to say. He very much is just someone who does whatever he feels like. That is very prevalent, especially in his interview.
He said something about like, I'm no cult leader, but blah blah blah. And I'm like, sir, you definitely
you're
are.
a cult leader. Yeah. The lights going out was the catalyst of creating the different tribes. So everyone leaks out of the safety place. And everyone kind of just darts for their side of the park, and the tribes are created. So we have the heroes, the Deadpools. How do you guys feel about them?
I feel like they just reminded me so much of like cops, and like for that reason, I just
Mm.
didn't like them.
The
Like,
Deadpools as cops?
yeah, they just seemed like
Interesting.
cops to me, man.
Honestly, they just seemed like a regular group that just got shit handed to them early, and like they're not really much of a character other than antagonist, like rivals for the pirates. I don't know, they didn't give me too much.
Well, they were the closest in proximity to them, so I think that was important. Like to see just how quickly they got picked off
Right.
because they were
Yeah.
really small in numbers right out the
Well,
gate.
they survived at the end. It was the fairies that died off first.
Well,
The
yeah.
fairies died off like day 2.
No, they picked them off one by one.
Well, I thought it was kind of like they're taking girls like once, like every once in a while, and then all of a sudden, like one day, they just took everybody.
Maybe once
Because
they
that's
got
when
them down small
that's when the
enough.
guy got what's it called, the one guy that stayed in the fairies got taken to the pirates. He's the one that was like, I wish every day that it was me that died. Is that how real you want me to get?
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. He was a real sad boy.
Sad boy hours.
Yeah, so the Deadpools, the superhero pools,
Fairies, the
fairies,
pirates,
pirates. We'll talk
our main
about those
antagonists.
motherfuckers. Well, there are others like the small ones just mentioned. We mentioned them
Oh,
before.
okay, the robots.
The robots, but I feel like they're
Robots?
not. The robots really aren't. They're just
The
kind of
robots
No.
kind
there.
of stuck to
Well,
themselves.
they kind of
also got picked
banded.
off
They banded together with the
with the
circus
security. Yeah.
people eventually.
Security, and then oh yeah, I guess the circus.
With the
Well,
The
freaks,
circus freaks,
okay, so
the best
actually when we
characters.
the
really
best.
get introduced to the robots, is when we're learning about the security guard, which is that interview where he talks about it was him and this other girl, and they're walking around and they're gonna go, I forgot what they're going to go see. I have it in my notes. But there were these two people in these hog masks that were hunting them down, and there's no explanation about these people.
Right.
It is just these people that were unaffiliated to any other tribe and were just like creepy murderous people. And it talks about how they were like running away from them, and there's a tripwire, and she fucking face plants and skids on the ground or like breaks her nose or something, and he just keeps on going because he's like, fuck, like he tried to save her or something, right? And like saw that she was like like they were like kicking her ribs in and like just killing her. He was like, yep, nope, I'm gone, bye. And then he goes like for the freaks, and then sees that and he goes, nope, and runs back to the robots.
Yeah.
He's like, bitches, don't you dare go out, like it is scary out there.
So those are kind of like in my head, like the kind of tier 2 tribes. I feel like the pirates and the shop girls were kind of like our main two big, and the circus freaks. They get really
Pirate
kind of
shop girls and
introduced
circus
later.
freaks, yeah.
And don't forget
So
about that single guy staying at the nice
Oh,
ass
we're
hotel.
gonna talk about him.
oh
Oh,
yeah, he's
don't
on
you
his
worry.
I love
own little
him.
island. All
That
right, so
was-
let's talk
will
about
That would be
our
me.
Yeah.
Literally, I
me.
was reading this and I was like, this is relatable content.
Yeah.
So we got through our tier 2. Now let's go to our tier 1. So we have the circus, the freaks. How do you guys feel about them?
They're my favorite.
I mean, yeah, duh.
That interview with the head, one of my favorites. I absolutely fell in love with him. I thought he was so fucking funny. There's a point where he's like, I just felt like a ghouly, bloody, freakish, proud little papa. He's just like, and like with Horror Nights coming up and everything, like, dude, who's the author? He had shit down. The timing of everything, genius.
They literally said Fright Nights, and I gasped because
Yeah. Well, we need to talk about what happened then. We're alluding to it, but what are we all alluding to?
Kind of like the book.
while some of the tribes turned to violence, like the pirates wanting to steal everyone's resources and steal people, the freaks came up with a brilliant idea of we don't have to do anything violent, we just need to scare people. So they luckily at the circus section of the park is where they store all the park's props and things for their version of Horror Nights, their Fright Fest. And so they
Halloween
just
decor.
yeah, so they decide to just decorate the park and make it very their part of the park and make it very creepy. And it was really smart because it wasn't even like, oh, like let's just scare people. The leader was like, we need to draw people in and then scare the shit out of them so they will never come back, basically. So they did that and they actually banded together with the mole men a little bit, who are
Yes.
we kind of mentioned them, but mole men are like mostly the maintenance workers, mostly older workers who knew before all this happened that this was going to happen, and they were like, "Fuck that!" So they decided to go hide in the tunnels underneath the park, which is also genius.
Yeah, the leader of the freaks, I think, like had a really interesting thing to say at the very beginning of this interview, and he said, "I didn't like participate in any of the killing, but I fear like I perpetuated it because they
Mm-hmm.
made it seem like they killed and displayed all these like bodies. So everyone else is like, well, fuck it, if they're killing everyone, then we're gonna do it too."
Mhm.
So I thought that was really genius, but also like I could totally see what he means.
Well, it saved them, but it caused a lot more chaos for everyone.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I just loved how serious that the leader of the freaks took it. I tabbed we couldn't just sling gore anywhere. That was tackiness, not camouflage. Like art. He was like, we're if we're gonna do this, we're gonna do this right, honey. Like I loved him so much.
And it worked perfectly because the interview right before we interview the head of the freaks, the circus people, I don't know exactly who it was, but they were like, we walked up to the circus and we saw dead bodies hung everywhere, and we like turned around and ran. I was like, what the fuck? Like, when did the circus people kill everyone? And then we get
Hmm.
that reveal, and I was like, genius, genius. Like, that was so good.
Yeah. That was one of the pirates. It was actually one
Mm.
of the first times we hear about the pirates, and like the whole entire time, the guy's just like, we weren't that bad, guys. Like we only killed 3 people in the ring. Like it wasn't that crazy.
They were a brotherhood.
They
Ugh,
were
gag
brotherhood.
me.
Yeah. I can't with them. They were just
I can't.
okay. So that's the circus. That's the freaks.
Shop
And
girls
then
next, please. I need to
Shop
talk about
Girls,
them.
guys.
The
Or Slay
best.
Girls.
As much as I say I would be a circus, I think I would be all up with Carol Ann. No, that's the Poltergeist
Clara
movie.
Yeah, yeah,
Ann.
yeah.
Clara
Clara
Ann.
Clara
Ann.
Ann, yeah.
She is my queen. Her and Tetanus are unstoppable,
I
and
was
I would be a shop
cackling.
girl on like hands down, no question.
Literally.
But it's so accurate. That's exactly what they would do.
I love her. I literally
They
can picture
explained the
her.
kind of girl that it
I
was,
picture
right?
her completely.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And her interview starts and she was like, it sucked for everyone, but I'll say it. It was the best thing that ever happened to me. I was like, yes, bitch.
No, absolutely amazing. There's actually so
It's
there's
awesome.
it's the anonymous one, the anonymous interview, and they do the whole thing. They paw the puddle. That's
Oh
where
my
that comes
God.
Paul in
from.
the bottle.
Meet me at Paul in 15 minutes.
Oh, yeah, yeah,
The dead
I just put
decomposing
LOL
body.
in my notes. I was just like, this
Oh
is
my
so funny.
God.
The archers, and they're screaming, Simon, Nick, Edgar. They're firing off the arrows and yelling the names of the arrows as they let them go. I was like, just like me for real.
Yeah, that part I was like, wait, what? Why
They
are
just
they
It
like
was
using
got, they
the
took
so
it
arrows?
so
funny.
seriously. I don't know. They named their
Listen,
weapons. They
I
were
would
like in
probably
it
name
to
my
win
weapons
it.
too. They had cap, they had tetanus, they named all the
Cap.
arrows. Cap.
I
Gotta
loved
check out
it.
those
Kneecapping.
kneecaps.
The shop girls were
Um,
unstoppable, truly.
what
They
else?
arguably they were the only ones that were truly doing their job.
They
They
ripped off
were,
someone's ear.
and they celebrated. That was
Yeah.
my favorite part. They were cackling and just laughing and hugging over this human ear. Like, iconic. It was so good.
It was so good. And also, I just want to put because also as this story is progressing, we're also getting to know these interviewees a little bit. And at least the anonymous one, what I caught, I put the note down as an eye for an eye. Because I was kind of trying to keep some sort of body count throughout the whole entire thing. And I forgot what my timeline was for this, but basically if you do the math, the pirates lost 5 people and the shop girls lost 5 people. It's like they lost 3-2, and then another battle happens and they lost 2 and the other ones lost 3. And it was just very like eye for an eye moment where it's just like it just was very dark, and it was like very clear that there really was no winner in this situation. And even though, like, they're having fun, the shop girls are very cute and they're very charming, but in the end, it's like they're in this war. Like, there's nothing great about this. And I thought that was really cool.
Yeah, and I can't remember if it is the anonymous interview, but I'm pretty sure it was a shop girl interview where they were saying like they realized early on that like this is just going to keep happening. Like they're just going to keep killing each other, and then once there's no more groups left, they're just going to start killing themselves. Like
Yeah.
Yep.
I forgot where that was, but yeah, I do remember that.
Because remember, like they don't know when they're gonna be rescued. Like for all they know, this is like what's gonna be the rest of their lives.
Mm-hmm.
yeah, there was a moment where someone had like noticed the leader of the shop girls. She said, "If we survive this," that was the first time someone ever said "if" and not "when" we get rescued.
Mm-hmm.
Which I
They
thought that
also
was like, oh shit.
they also had no sense of time. Like
Yeah.
they had no
Mm.
clocks. They had no idea how long they were down in
Oh
the
yeah, it was just
shelter.
always
Like
dark or always
and
raining.
well, we'll talk about that in a second. They were just
Yeah.
all wet and growing fungus. Oh my God.
Oh, it had to be
In
so stinky in there.
Florida.
It had to be disgusting. I'm gonna call out the for continuity issues, the writer, where they talk
Ooh, I
about
love
the
that shit.
moment that every morning that they would meet up at 9 a.m., but then they talk about later how no one had working watches, how there's like no electricity.
Mm.
So it's like, how are they?
I think someone had like a watch or something. Like
They
one
talk about the
tribe
shop
had.
girls. The shop girls had watches. But that was the only one. So I guess maybe the moment had watches. I don't know. Oh, you know what? No. I will I'll retract my continuity statement because it really is again in the perspective of the interviewee. So one interviewee could be like, there was no sense of time, and that's just because they weren't
Ooh, you're
in that
right.
tribe. Yeah. So the moment had great timing, which God bless for them, because if they're underground for the most part, like think about for a month going absolutely insane in those dark, musty ass tunnels. Like,
Damn. Ugh.
He said morning meeting saved our lives, and that was
yeah.
relatable for all my teachers out there.
Morning meeting.
Yeah. And the last tribe we have not really discussed yet.
Okay, so there's the pirates, which is our last top tier, but I do also want to give shout out to our Switzerland girls, our med tent girls, the two. But the pirates, yeah.
No comment.
God damn, they were so easy to hate and so hard to like God damn, there was no redeeming qualities, honestly.
No.
And they tried. They tried.
Even though they had women in their ranks, it was such a sausage fest.
Yeah, I think they call the women brothers too.
They
Yeah.
did.
I mean, that one I don't really care too much about. Yeah, whatever. Everyone's brothers. Um, that's just like, I don't know, a easy label. It's like saying, "Hey guys," kind of thing. But like the way that they were brainwashed in this cult to think that what they were doing was okay by any means. And like if you read every interview except for the one that was just like, I like hated it. But like even then, when you read the interview, he's saying that in the moment, like he was like singing along with them. He was a part of this cult. It's like they all still thought pretty highly of themselves afterwards. They in their minds were pretty justified by what they were doing. Their beings were justified. Um
They were defending each other in court afterwards.
Yeah, it's just like it was disgusting. And Eshe talked about it too, where it's just like Eshe, I was just saying where we were talking about it how when we're doing the body cam footage and they're talking about rescuing everyone, and the lieutenant was just like, oh yeah, like the pirates are like the easiest part of my day. I don't know why everyone was saying such horrible things about them. It's like
The only people who did not think the pirates were monsters were toxic men. The dad, who was annoying and an asshole to his wife the whole trip, was like, "Oh yeah, the pirates were great. They saved our life that day." a literal police officer. We're like, yep, pirates were easy. I don't know why everyone thought they were assholes. All the boys in the park were like, oh, the
Oh, I
pirates were
didn't catch
awesome.
that.
Like, what a positive brotherhood experience we had. Like, it was just all toxic men
Mhm.
who thought
What's
their
that one
behavior was
book
okay.
with the boy troop? That
The troop?
not what's
You know that
I didn't
troop.
read it, but it's like a lot of people read it in high school.
Lord of the
It's
Flies.
Lord
Lord
of
of
the
the Flies.
Outsiders. Oh,
Flies.
This has been
Outsiders.
this book has
Also
been
good.
Oh, I
compared to
love
that
The
book.
Outsiders. Great book. 5 out of 5. Lord
Very
of the
like Lord of the
Flies. Very
Flies.
Lord of the Flies.
Yeah, I keep
I think,
seeing
yeah.
that this book. People keep saying that this book is Lord of the Flies meets Battle Royale,
Ooh.
yeah.
And we
which
It's
just
I
like
watched
definitely
Battle
see.
Hunger
Royale.
We did
Games.
just see
We
Battle
did
Battle
Royale.
just
Royale.
watch
That's
Battle
crazy.
Royale.
But a lot more guns. There's only one bitch with a gun. Also, we gotta talk about her, the bitch with the gun. Oh,
Loved
loved
her.
her so much. But
I
yeah, a
liked
lot
her.
less guns than Battle Royale, which I'm happy about. I loved that.
Uh,
Also very questionable. That they had real bows and arrows, real swords. I was like,
well,
Right.
Richie Fresno wanted everything authentic.
yeah, but that just seems
I did want to talk about this because I did really enjoy this detail because um I love my like Disney lore and I there's like everybody knows that like the Pirates of the Caribbean ride like there's like real skulls, there's
Mm.
like real shit.
There's
So I just
one
thought
real
wait, is that
skeleton.
true?
There's one real
Is that
skeleton in the
like
Pirates of the Caribbean.
actual true?
Actual real life fact in
Not like, oh,
California.
Disney's head is, in the freezer in the
No,
back. Like
actual fact.
actual.
It's because it's easier to obtain real human remains than recreate them.
it's
But
cheaper.
It's cheaper, yeah.
oh, that's
Um
nasty.
A lot
so
of
I thought
old
that
horror movies did that.
yeah,
Oh my
Ew. Well,
God.
like I know there was that one famous horror movie shot where like they didn't tell the actress until afterwards that it was a real human.
Psycho.
Yeah. Um, but I didn't realize that Disney. Okay, sorry, Brady, keep going. Sorry,
no,
sorry.
that's okay. And so yeah, I just like that because it just fit along and confirmed even more in my head of like the scale of this amusement park being so authentic to have real swords and the pirate rides and uh, a real cannon that could be used.
Literally
Uh,
two, maybe just one,
I think just one, but
maybe. Dan,
yeah.
yeah, like how real do you think this could be? Like, do you see
I
credibility
think
in this?
I think that's why he kind of segregated it from being it called Disney because like we can kind of suspend our disbelief and say, okay, Fantastic Land is extra enough to have all this real stuff. But I don't think Disney has weapons anywhere.
They
It
don't have
could
a
even.
riot. They don't have a riot area of the park where they just have guns.
No, but they mentioned something of they had a real jail cell.
Yeah, in the
Yeah.
Pirates,
It's
because
a
that's where they
pirate
kept all
ride.
Oh, that's great. Yeah.
Yeah.
their
I don't know about that.
adoptees.
I don't think that's at Disney.
But did we talk about like Brock Hoppy, like the first kill, like into the
No,
evolution?
not really. Yeah, so
Cool.
Because that's
what's
pretty
it called? The
big.
Batman
Oh,
scene, the fake Batman.
I'm talking about the sanction. Is that what we're talking
Yeah.
about?
So
yeah.
Okay.
so there's this one kid who is like they call him fake Batman, who
Oh,
ends up being Paul the Puddle. He's like climbing on top of the roofs, like shouting Batman quotes or whatever, and then just like stumbles, um, falls severely to the point where no one thinks that he's gonna get the help that he needs in the time to survive or at least have a quality of life. So Brock comes in with a what's it called? A stanchion?
Yeah.
ascension, yeah. Like
Stanchion.
those things that like the ropes flip onto, like when they like while you're waiting in line.
Yeah, and just takes him out of
Bashes
his
that skull
misery
in.
and then walks away. And in his interview, a fucking maniac. It's just like, well, no one stopped me. No one talked to me afterwards and said that wasn't a cool idea. I just had people gathering towards me afterwards. And you know what? I might not, like, I wouldn't call myself the leader of the pirates, but I was a damn good one.
Few of the people in their interviews were like, "That's like the only kill that Brock Hockney did that I could have justified."
Yeah.
Uh,
Cause I mean, yeah, it was a justified kill. At least, like, I mean, I wouldn't have. Do you guys think that you would have been the ones to do it? Would you have been a Brock? No, but I would have been glad if a Brock came along in that kind of moment. Like, I wouldn't have the guts to do it,
Definitely not.
but he took it to the nth degree. He kind of like made it his whole personality.
yeah.
Yeah. he talks about, I think like more in his interview, which I'm sure we'll get to, but he like
Yeah.
talks about he's like, I didn't ask to be a leader, but that's what people wanted. People wanted someone to just like make the choices, make the decisions, and no one was
Yeah.
doing it. So when someone does, people will just follow. Which I think that's like the scary part
Right.
He
of
was very perceptive of others.
yeah. He was like a kind of a mastermind a little bit.
He's a psychopath. He
Yeah.
very much knew
He
how to
knew what he was
manipulate
doing.
others. Like he knew exactly what he was doing. But before we go into Brock, let's talk a little bit more about pirates and like the things that they did. So they cut someone's hands off. They cut the Deadpool guy's hands off, kind of first off the bat. And we find out it's because they went into one of the shops to with like one of the girls who didn't even speak English really. Um, and oh my God, that's like honestly, the first scene in the book that's like, oh, like we're in some shit. So they go and try to steal something from the pirates, I guess, and they get caught. And the two guys come out and they're like, we know there's a girl in there. First one to get the girl like can join us. The other one will meet their fate. So the other guy, not the interviewee, ends up getting the girl. And he has to get branded. So he gets branded. And then they're holding the interviewee and you're like, all right, take care of the girl first. Go to brand the guy who is part of the Deadpools but will be indoctrinated into the pirates takes that the branding instrument and does it to her cheek and it goes through her cheek and into her like tongue, her gums. And that and like they talk about the scream that she does and like her crying and like how he just uses that time. I think that's when that guy like leaves. And I'm like,
Branding is very culty,
Definitely.
real. And that
very
was
culty.
disgusting.
Yeah, these weren't just like necessary kills. They were getting like serial killer in there.
Yeah. And then I think that's the scene where they cut off the hands of the guy and was just like, that's what happens when you steal from us and leaves him
It reminded me
with
of
the
the
Deadpools
menu.
with the stanchion. Yeah, right. Oh, with
Yeah.
his middle finger up. His severed hand with the middle finger up.
Yeah. And they also
Yeah.
kidnapped all the fairy girls one by one in the middle of the night, like absolute monsters.
Thunderdomed them.
Yeah, he made people fight to the death, and they were like drowning in the log flume ride. I was just thinking like Splash Mountain, like bodies like going down. Like they were wild. They were crazy
What?
for that.
What else did the pirates do? They
Well, the cannon.
Well,
yeah,
yeah.
I'm gonna put that
Oh,
one more towards Brock when we talk about Brock.
Hmm.
But overall, what did the
That was
pirates
kind of
do?
it. I mean, they were just
I feel
assholes.
like
They were
that's it.
Nazis and they were
They
police officers.
I guess that's also Brock with the Switzerland girls. Yeah, so I guess let's talk about Brock,
Totally.
that horrifying motherfucker. One of the second to last interview, I guess. He talks with Brock, uh, who is the leader of the pirates and really the psychopath behind it all. They talk about it a little bit throughout the whole entire book. We're like, oh yeah, like whatever, blah blah blah, but not as bad as Brock or like whatever Brock did. Like Brock is always a scapegoat for everything in terms of like, yeah, like we were bad, but Brock was so much worse. Yeah, so what do you guys want to talk about with Brock first?
Well, I mean, I guess just the pieces. What's it called?
Council of Pieces.
Why can't I
Who
remember
wants
that
to talk
name?
about Council of Pieces?
Yeah, so our good buddy Sam Garley is still around. Haven't heard from him in a while, but he's still around. And once the factions kind of start forming and the violence starts ensuing, he goes um, to each of the factions and he has a nice invitation for each one. But he wants to invite them to the Summit of Peace at the center of the park, where basically he wants to come to a truce and to just figure out how they can all organize back into one unit and do their jobs, basically. Um, and everyone's in for it. So I can't remember how many of each show up. Some shop girls go. One of I think one of the shop girls, or no, one of the heroes, sorry. She's like, oh, I'm like going to school to be a reporter. So like she's like, I'm gonna go up on top of the giant exclamation point, which is in the center of the park, and I have a good vantage point and I can hear what's going on and take notes. And the leader of the freaks shows up. He's dressed up in a tie. He's trying to maintain some like mysteriousness because of all the rumors about them. And a few people from the Mole Men show up. Everyone's there. Brock Hockney, of course, shows up, and then Sam, he kind of gives like the speech to bring everyone together, or whatever. Um, and then Brock Hockney, well, everyone's kind of heckling him as he's doing this, and Brock is very clearly upset, and he starts talking about his dead brother. He's getting really escalated, and then a cannon just goes off. It shoots the exclamation point.
And some
Beheads,
people.
yeah, beheads someone,
Mr.
kills a bunch of people.
Powers.
Yeah, very brutal.
Very
So
Hunger Games.
Very brutal.
very Hunger Games. So it turns out the pirates actually went early, and they're the ones that set up the table.
The genius of that. Oh my God, where they're just
Yeah.
like, because like they talk about the table at first. They're like, huh, like it's like how funny is it that like how much money does it take, or how expensive is this tablecloth and this setup that they usually take from like the Pirates Cove or something. They like mention it being in like the pirate section. And for it to be like out in the rain, in the pouring rain like this, the people that are in charge like would be like going crazy if it was under normal circumstances. So it's like it came from the pirates, but like no one questioned, and they say it's like no one questioned why the table was even there. Like not even Sam Garlick, and he was the one who fucking organized this whole entire thing. That pull away, like it felt like I don't think any of you guys watch anime, but it was a very like anime moment of like this huge ass reveal, like a canon, like that is
camp.
it was so camp. Like I loved it, honestly. I thought that was a great part.
Yeah, I mean, sad that everyone died and that girl sitting on the exclamation point almost didn't make it. But yeah, it was funny, I guess.
Yeah, and I like too how like it was just the style of the writing. Like the canon was mentioned like one or two times before this, and like I just like throwing you those little pieces. Like, okay, there's gonna be a goddamn canon that's gonna come into play here, and the way that it happened was just so like over the top. Like, and you know that Brock Hockney loves his theatrics.
He loves his
I guess.
moment.
Yeah, that was just an awesome scene, honestly.
Later, when they go and blow up the exclamation point, one to like tell everyone to cut their shit out, and also like as like an SOS because they're like this thing is massive, and if like anyone flies over the park and sees that thing is down, like they will know to come rescue us. And they grossly underestimated how much TNT they were using.
The amount.
And they fucking exploded like the entire middle of the park. That was amazing.
So funny.
I loved that so much.
That was the Mole Men, right? And
What's called? So they did have two girls who they're like first aid trained. They're not even, I don't think they were registered nurses or anything really. But they're just first aid certified. And like the girl that did make it out, she made a good point. She was like, we're just supposed to hold you off until you could get the help that you actually need. It's like we're the band-aid over the bullet hole, basically. And they talk about that a lot, about the necessity of medical treatment during this whole entire thing. I think it takes until like 2/3 into the book where you finally have an interview where someone talks about the audible difference because it was the first time in days that there was no rain. So you have to think about how wet and how dark and damp and humid everything is the whole entire time. Like again, Florida weather, swampy area. These people are never getting dry, especially the moment like you're in like honestly like a breeding ground for mold and bacteria. It's not a great place. So like these two girls kind of recognize that and say, hey, we are here to treat everyone. Like we are going to stay in this one area, and no matter what, no matter who you come from, whether or not you're from whatever tribe, we will treat you. And Brock and his gang from the pirates goes up to them one day and is like, hey, yeah, like we're taking one of you guys for ourselves. And they end up being able to create such a ruckus that they're saved. But then a few days before they're saved, Brock and them go again, except this time they what's the difference that they do? They
Well,
burn down.
he says one of you's coming, the other ones we're killing.
Yes, that's what it was. It was the threat of, and she was 100% like the more likable one and like is like better in this kind of circumstance basically, and she was the one that ended up dying. I forget how she dies.
No, she doesn't. They
She
both
doesn't
lived.
die? They both lived?
Yeah, it was making it seem like the other one girl died, but then at the end it's like we still keep in touch.
Oh, yes. Yes. That is right. Um yeah, but it's like again just more on so for the pirates of seeing um, um this one resource that everyone is sharing but wanting to just keep it for themselves and understanding that if they take it away from everyone else that they're going to be at such a higher advantage. Um
The
so yeah,
entitlement.
the entitlement, the audacity.
And they just knew that they could, because again, going back to Brock's point, like no one stopped us. They walked in there and they said, one of you is coming with us. Choose who it's going to be. But one of you is coming with us.
And
Like,
again,
I would have
so okay
shot
with killing
them.
someone.
Like,
Yeah.
what? How fucking no? Get the fuck out of here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's really all the groups that we
Yeah.
encounter. So now let's talk about our lone wolf.
Literally just the most random. Honestly, feels out of place. So grateful it's in there. Does not feel like it jives with the rest of the story.
I did
But
love it.
nonetheless, the best chapter in the whole book. Chapter interview 18 with Jason Card. This boy, genius. So the second everyone like branches out and finds their tribes, he says, "Yeah, not for me." He goes over. He like kind of risks it all and just runs through the mud, through like the water to one of the hotels that he knows is on property and close by. And he's like, no one's probably going to go. There's going to be ample resources. There's rooms. I'm just going to go chill there and just like wait this thing out by myself. So that's exactly what he does. He makes it there. He goes inside. He's sleeping in all the different rooms. He like finds a library. He starts reading. He's like, I've never had time to read before. This is awesome. He's pissing off the balcony into the lobby. He's having a good time. Just having so much fun, living life, sweet life, Zach and Cody style.
Yeah.
Then one day, because he also talked about he got so in tune with the sounds of the hotel after several weeks of just isolation, you just like do. And he heard people coming in. So he was like, oh shit, this is what I've been like preparing for. I'm not happy about it, but I'm ready to deal with this. And he like, I really wasn't following his strategy. He was like locking some doors and like going to other doors because they were just like banging on all the doors to see
Oh,
if anyone was there. Turns out that these two people are like the mysterious hog people that are kind of getting alluded to the whole time. We never figure out who they are. They sound like absolute horrifying monsters. And they really fuck with this kid. So like he eventually outsmarts them. They can't find him. He hears them leaving. And then he goes out to the balcony, and the girl, there it says like one of them's presumably male, one of them's presumably female. The female one is just like waving to him in her like mask.
so
And
creepy.
the
Giving the
chapter
stranger.
ends giving the strangers, and the chapter ends with honestly the scariest like sentence in the whole book that he says. Um,
And they just wave
sometimes,
at
um,
each other.
sometimes he's like they're getting closer to me. Sometimes they're further away. Shit, man, I've moved 3 times since I've got out of that park, and the postcards always know where I am. And what do you make of that?
Oh
Are they
yeah.
coming for me, or are they just saying hi?
Sometimes like it's just a
Yes.
postcard with his like location close by. Like how fucking horrifying is that?
That was like I literally got a chill reading that. I was like,
And that's why I
holy
think it's
shit.
maniacs. I think they're just
And why is he
maniacs.
targeted way after the fact? Like, why is he still
He
being
was
targeted?
literally minding his business. That was so scary. Ultimately, he survives, and then we also get like a kind of follow up on him, really, really briefly. One of the rescue workers, one of the first responders, go in, and he was one of the first people they find. And he's like, the rescuer says, at first I thought he was like a little bitch because he was running, screaming, and crying, and then I read his interview. And then I knew he was a hero. And I was like, hell yeah. He was so badass.
And I don't know, like I'm a little confused as well, like the exact details because like there was one point where he said he could hear like screaming, like bloody murder, like screaming. And then at
Yeah.
one point, I feel like they said that they found 3 dead bodies at the
They
hotel.
did. They do say
So
that.
were
So
those
they
people bringing people there and murdering them? They had chainsaws somehow.
Yeah. But how are they getting there?
Yeah, so that's the thing. So that's one of the things where I really credit the author for being so detail oriented, where like even down to the rainwater and the flooded water, where that's like sewage. That's not water. And both characters that we follow at some point when they talk about going through the water, like it has consequences.
Mhm.
And even with Jason in this interview, he talks about like how the like it wasn't pretty. The bathrooms, like the reason, I mean, like he was having fun pissing off the balcony. He said like it was the light of his life at one point, but it's like that was also kind of necessity. Like the bathrooms were disgusting, especially the first floor. So like there's that he has some credibility there, and they do talk about at some point that they found 3 bodies that they kind of pieced together to be 3 bodies. They're like they were
Yeah.
severely disfigured. So it's there's the question of who were these warthog mask peoples? Like, do you think that they were maniacs that and they talk about this like because they said they like sprinkle it in. They're like, do you think it was just some maniacs that found this opportunity to go crazy and just kind of go wild and kill people, killing spree style? Or do you think it might have been a defectee from the pirates or from some other tribe that just decided to go hog wild on their own? Or I
Yeah.
guess 2 of them
In my
got
head, I was
implied.
like, I just automatically assumed it was 2 of the original group that was in the shelter. But Gabby was like, people could have just like been squatting in the hotel when the hurricane started. And I was like, that is a really good point. Like, who says they evacuated the full park? Maybe people who weren't team members, like scheduled to be working the hurricane, just were there to like squat and fuck around. Like, that didn't occur to me.
That's really true. I had thought for some reason that they had come from the Freaks just because
Mm.
I think the first time we like, or maybe not the first time, but I think the leader of the Freaks was talking about them or about how like people were there were rumors that people had seen them, and I thought that he had said that the masks were from like the Halloween stuff or something like that.
But
But
they say he says that it is a really well done. He's like, damn, like that's a really well done mask. Like it is very smart to like because warthogs are like very scary just in nature. He gives nods off. He does say like there was rumors that it could have been one of the freaks. So he was like, as far as I knew, I like and I took account of my people, and he seems like someone who is very responsible. He's like, that was none of my people. As far as I know, all of the freaks, like our hands are clean. All we did was do really cool illusions, but we never hurt anybody. But he said
Yeah.
he talks about it. He was like that was a really cool mask. Like it is very smartly designed as someone who like loves horror and loves everything. Like he was like, I mean, like nods off to whoever did that, but that
mm,
wasn't us.
It's just the
Mhm.
postcards for me. Like, why were they like? What
That's
was
why
their
I think they're
deal?
just like I think they're just maniacs. I thought
yeah,
that that's at least what my interpretation was.
I was really hoping that the anonymous was going to be one of the
Oh,
like
Mm.
one of the
hogs.
warthogs. Oh, that would have been cool.
Yeah, and a lot of it comes out, I think, between like those last 2 final interviews we have here. So we have like the Brock interview, which a lot of just like how not remorseful he was comes out, and then the very, very final interview we get is Richie Fresno, the new owner, the CEO of FantasticLand, who like kind of exposes them a little bit. He's like, listen, they never made me sign an NDA, so I actually don't care about saying any of this. I hate that company and I'm glad it all burned down. And he just like, yeah, it was really poor planning. Whoever gave them the green light that they were okay was like an asshole. And like, I'm happy I sold it and got some profit off it. He's like, I live a great life now. And like, I'm so free of that place. And that's kind of right where we leave off. I want to ask, what was everyone's reaction to hearing what the park turned into?
How
I
fucked
That
guess.
up.
so fucked up.
I know I
Yeah,
would
so
visit it though. That's the sad part.
Well,
I would,
it
yeah, I'd
said
go.
they're probably gonna make their
In
money
a
back
half a
in one
year.
year.
In like half a year, 1 year, yeah.
I would go. They would have
Oh my
merch shops for
God.
all the tribes. I would
Oh,
pick.
absolutely.
How
Like I
fucked
would see it.
up.
But going back like to the capitalism and all, right? Like that would totally happen.
And you
Like
know what sucks?
revisit, pay me all this money to come revisit this horrible tragic event and relive it in a fake fantasy type of way.
Literally.
Mm.
Large PTSD for like so many, such a big group of people. But what also sucks is that, again, failed management and whatnot, but like he lived his best life. He was like, yeah, I sold my company. I am now like, I'm making money off of this, aren't you? He's like, you're selling a book off of this. Like, you're no better than I am in some perspectives. But it sucks that like out of all the pain and hurt that was caused from these few incidents, like for him, that was just like inconvenience. Like, oh fuck, like I can't talk to FantasticLand, whatever. Hopefully they're doing okay. And that was based on protocols that he did not upkeep. They talked about that too. They're like, yeah, they were fantastic protocols put in place, but they're so outdated and so wordy and not at all user friendly that in times of emergency, like who the fuck is gonna read this? So it was like he was responsible for kind of a little bit for what everything went down. Like he was not prepared enough for this kind of situation to put all of those lives in, but he's the one making all the money.
You just kind of blew my mind because you said, like, I thought, oh my God, I would still read that book. And then I looked and I'm like, I literally did read that book. If it said nonfiction on here, I would have read it 10 times faster. Like, that sounds so interesting. So I'm like, we are also the villains. We're part of the media that would have been down for all the juicy details of this crazy, like, if it happened at Disneyland, like, we would have been
Oh,
looking at
100%. This would 100% be the way that it was. It was a national tragedy. This is years later, and now he like he's gonna make money off of this book kind of situation. It's like this is
Right.
some juicy stuff that like, and then he talks about it in the foreword where he's like, or in the afterword where he's just like, I see this girl crying in front of me, see how much she's changed and like other things she's been through, and all I want to ask is like, did she encounter Brock Hockney? Like, what went on? Like the curiosity of it all and like the consumerism, the media.
I mean, look
Consumerism of
at
it
look
all.
at the Ocean Gate sub, how that
Right,
impacted
right.
you. You're telling me there wouldn't be memes going on about
Literal
Fantastic
memes.
Land?
Mhm.
Like
Oh my God.
The which tribe are you quiz? Like, that's so real.
Dude, that's
BuzzFeed, come on.
BuzzFeed.
Yeah,
100%.
100%.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that leads us kind of like right into the afterword, which again, fiction, which kind of like is the tone throughout the whole book, this very realistic approach to this very fictional event. But the author, kind of just is talking about those things Gabby kind of mentioned, like what was it all for? We're all just gonna like feed into this and find entertainment through it. But for so many, it was such a tragic event and still kind of leaves the reader right on the very last page with a little of like at the end of the day what was it all for? Like, is this just to prove that evil and violence lurks inside all of us and we're all like easily swayed by like someone else's intentions? Like, and he says like, I don't know, none of us do, and that literally ends the book right there.
That's it.
So I don't know. I mean, obviously, the whole point, I was like, no one would turn this fast. Like, it took 2 days for these kids to turn into, as my boy, the head of the freak said, into little stabby stabby monsters. 2 days, just because they didn't have their phones. Like, what? How does that happen? Like, what happens in the human psyche to let that happen?
Do we each just want to go around and say which tribe we would be in?
Yeah.
I will start. I think I would 100% be with the freaks. I would hear that they have weed, and I would go running.
Eden
Also,
Horror Nights.
the horror night stuff is fun too.
Freaks for me as well, definitely.
I guess I would also probably do freaks, but also Jason's secluded, nice
Um,
ass like hotel sounds great. The like the way he explained having to go through like the sewage like water, and he's like, oh, the first floor, like you could still smell it. That would that's why at least with the freaks, I would have to deal with that.
I would love to be with the freaks, but I would be with the shop girls for sure.
yeah,
I'd
yeah.
be
I see that
destroying
for
those
you,
kneecaps.
I
Gab.
could 100% see
Yeah,
You
I
that.
would
see that
need
for you,
no,
Gab.
you would need to be our nurse.
Yeah,
I'm
you need to be
Oh,
Switzerland.
Gab,
Switzerland.
you would go to
True.
Switzerland. But then she would be
Be a
kidnapped by the
nurse.
pirates like day one. She's so
Easily.
kidnappable.
I'm so I say this on the daily. I'm so kidnappable. It's such an issue.
I had mentioned previously that I did prepare with a surprise.
Oh, yeah, what
Yes.
was it?
Yeah.
So I finished the book and I thought to myself, like I said, I played a game the whole time of is this realistic? And it really was. So I was like, this guy had to be a cast member. Come on. So I Google him, read the history, see nothing. Go to his Instagram, I see his family photos. They're in a bunch of amusement parks all the time, but I don't see any cast member photos. What do? I DM'd him. And what happened? A whole
Oh my
conversation.
No
God.
way!
Yeah.
Are you
So
serious?
Cool.
yeah, so we had a good combo, and I feel like I should summarize it because it's like paragraphs, but I asked some cool questions. I asked like 3 questions because I had just finished the book and I was like, I need to know these things,
Damn, that's so
That's
cool.
sick.
right?
Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah. And I thought about it. I was like, yeah, you can kind of just DM, especially authors, like they want to tell you about the book. You can just ask people stuff. So
It's true.
I told him, my horror book club and I just read FantasticLand. I loved it, and I'm a past cast member. And how did you write about the experiences so accurately? Are you a former amusement park employee or just an enthusiast? And I'll read his stuff like out so we know what he said. Hey Dan, glad the book worked for you and your book club. I have never worked at a theme park, but I am married to a Disney Parks fan and have been exposed to a lot of material. In addition, I've been around a lot of big talkers in the corporate world and I disdain them. I think that played into the Fantasticland corporate culture, as it were. Do you have any other questions? And I was like, okay. So
Oh my
Let's go.
God.
That's
Mike
awesome.
Bockoven.
yeah, so I thanked him. I said our book club's called House of a Thousand Books. We post on YouTube and Spotify. Your episode should be coming soon. My other question was, oh, I said, what was the inspiration for formatting the book in an interview style? I think it worked very well and it gave us a sense of realism. And he said, first he said, that's great. I'll check out your channel. Please let me know in the
No.
Hey, Mike.
Hey,
please
Mike,
let
if
me
you want
know.
to come on, let us know.
Yeah.
Said, please let me know when the Fantasticland app drops. So I will. But
I'm terrified.
he said on the interview format, I presume you're looking for a better answer than I ripped it off of World War Z. He said, honestly, I jammed a bunch of influences together. I'm a former journalist. Makes sense.
Okay,
So
Ooh.
the
definitely
style
see
was
that.
so the style was very natural to me. I also thought it was a good fit for the story. Said it was a great fit. And then I said, which character was your favorite to write from? He said Glenn.
Ooh.
Definitely Glenn.
Uh,
Head of the freak.
Go.
I thanked him and I said the audiobook added a lot. Overall, love the book. Let you know when it's out. I'm gonna send in the link. So
Sick,
thank
sick,
you for
sick, sick.
answering me, Mike.
Wow.
That's awesome. Thanks,
We love
Wow.
Mike.
analyzing the book.
Thanks,
Thanks,
Dan.
Mike.
Thanks, Mike.
Thanks,
wow.
Dan.
No,
That was
literally,
a great little
Dan.
surprise.
That being
Okay.
said, my rating was a 1.
No, Gabby, you talked about I applaud the author, this and that. I'm like, he's gonna listen. So keep on talking, Gab.
No, it
Wow.
was. I love this book. I guess we'll jump into ratings because
Yeah,
to be
Yeah,
go for it,
honest, like
Gab.
I joked, but 5, man. I loved this book so much.
kept it at my 4 rating. The DM did not sway me to a 5 solely because I'm very picky. But this is definitely out of the 2 I've read for book club my favorite so far because it was realistic to my experience and it was a what would you do type of situation and the writing was so unique and the interviews were unique. Loved it.
I would, no surprise, I would give it a 5. I am gonna get better. I'm gonna be more picky, but this is it's hard when this one is a 5. It is
Banger after banger.
absolutely. I mean the realism of it. Like I always find the most scary things to be the most realistic, and this one was definitely up there for that. And like you said, Dan, just like the what would you do? Like I loved trying to put myself there and figure out like what I would have done in this situation. And um, yeah, 5.
Love
Nice.
that.
You
Steph.
can go.
No, you go, you go.
I think my rating is probably a 3. Um, yeah, I guess I would say I loved the mixed media of it. I would read more books like that.
Mm.
Not a lot about this book intrigued me very, very much. I felt like it was something I've kind of read before. It just made me think of like like we were talking about like which tribes would you be in, like that was essentially like which house would you be in like Harry Potter,
Yeah, yeah.
and like very like
Mm.
kind of like Walking Dead-y with like a little like it, and we're also like talking like horror nights, like Last of Us. Like I'm getting a lot of like very similar narratives around, and I guess I was just kind of looking for something a little like plot twisty or a little like, oh my God. And
Hmm.
I didn't get that, but I will say my favorite chapter was Jason's chapter. That was like the one I was reading the most. The fastest probably. But it's a solid 3, because I really liked the format.
Yeah, no, and I love all the diverse ratings. We need diversity. It'd be boring if we were all the same. No, that was serious. It would be boring if we all
I
just said we
know
loved it.
we can't give everything a 5. Like,
But that being said, I
With
did
that
give
being
it
said,
I did give it a 5 stars. I mean, I really, really loved this book. Theme parks are my jam. I'm such a theme park nerd, and a horror novel set in a theme park just like scratched every single itch that I didn't know I had. I loved it. I got a little jump scare when I first looked at like the blocky text, and I was like, shit, this is gonna be like a dense book. And then I was flying through it. I needed to know everything. I just loved it. It was so realistic. I loved like how in my head the whole time, like you can't help but compare to like Disney and Universal. Like I could just imagine like I pictured it all perfectly, and it was great. The characters were awesome. I loved every voice was so distinct, so different. Like reading from like Clara Ann to like the younger people who were trapped there to like then like the authority figures and like the first aid people. Like everyone's voice was so clear and different. It was great. I loved it. It did everything I wanted to. It was gory. It went way further than I expected. I thought like maybe like a body was gonna like turn up by the end of it. It was bloody. Like I don't know. It was great.
join us next month. We will be reading The Weight of Blood by Tiffany D. Jackson. I'm really excited for this. This is a Carrie retelling. So this is how we can get a little bit of Stephen King without getting Stephen King into this book
ow,
club.
Yes,
plot
women
hole
authors doing
or no
Stephen
plot
King
hole.
is acceptable. Yeah, really excited. I've heard really great things. I think it's going to be really fun and bloody and awesome and girl boss vibes for September. And we will catch you next time with our discussion of The Weight of Blood.